So a $4 trillion company just panicked over a blog post. Now think about that for a second. Nvidia, the king of AI, the one producing all the shovels in this gold rush, felt the need to write a secret 7-page memo to a Wall Street analyst just to defend themselves against a Substack writer and the guy who predicted the 2008 housing crash. So why are they so scared? Because if the rumors about hardware reliability and circular financing are true, we aren't looking at a tech revolution. We're looking at an accounting bubble that makes the dot-com crash look like a tea party. So companies betting billions on Nvidia GPUs that supposedly chug along for 6 solid years at max throttle. But what if the hardware flakes out way sooner, or if it just becomes irrelevant faster, leaving massive write-downs in its wake? So from my corner in software trenches, I've spotted these cycles where flashy tech promises eternal life, yet reality hits with breakdowns and balance sheet bombs. So think about it. Why would a chip giant thrive if their gear lasted forever, killing the upgrade cash cow? So reports scream water cooler cooled rigs are failing faster, so how are firms stretching depreciation to pump up profits? So let's look at the fallout here when the truth bomb drops. Billions in assets turn to dust overnight. So let's dive into some of this today. Welcome to Startup Hack. I'm Spencer, and here at Startup Hack, we love to build custom software solutions for companies. With a decade of executive leadership as a fractional CTO and 25 years in software development, I've mastered transforming tech teams and products. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the GPU durability myth. Now, you see some of these servers, this shoulder, over here, pumping away over here. It's because we're taking older hardware and figuring out how to make it really useful and building some awesome software for some of our clients on AI, using LLMs, using real tech and real software, but using older GPUs. But that's kind of the whole premise of this talk today here, right? The GPU durability myth and clever bookkeeping that are fueling Nvidia's rocket ride, but cracks are showing under the surface. I've navigated enough tech waves to spot when numbers don't add up, echoing old busts like .com overbuilds. So we're going to jump into the breakdown and show you the real story here today. So we need to talk about what happened on November 23rd. Nvidia sent out a defensive memo explicitly rebutting claims made by Michael Burry, yes, the big short guy, right? A forensic analyst who called out their financial structures. When a company that size starts answering to individual critics, they aren't leading, they're bleeding. So today I'm going to break down some of the reasons. And we're going to talk about water cooling failures and accounting tricks and why Google might be about to eat Nvidia's lunch. So now, very first thing is do me a huge favor. I live for discussions, so hit the comments down below. Pause the video right now and tell me, what do you think? Do you think Nvidia is part of the bubble? Do you think they're going to go away? Do you think they'll just take a massive hit? Obviously, they're not going to go away because everybody's still clamoring for their GPUs, right? And I've been in the tech long enough to know that the numbers don't totally add up. We've got trillion-dollar companies claiming their GPUs will be useful for 6 years, while Nvidia is pushing a new chip annually that could make the old ones look like calculators. So Michael Burry isn't calling this Enron, he's calling it Cisco. For those who don't remember, Cisco sold real equipment to real customers building real networks during the dot-com boom. These customers just built capacity for demand that never showed up. So Cisco's stock dropped 89%, and Burry's final public act as a funds manager, well, he was betting against AI infrastructure. So what exactly is this depreciation trick, and why should we care? So let's jump into some of these reports here and see what's happened this week here. So here's a post from Rohan Paul. So Google is trying to win AI by making compute cheap, not by beating Nvidia on raw speed. Nvidia sells GPUs to clouds with a 70% margin. So get that. All of these huge H100s, B200, like B20s, all these, they're all being sold with a 70% margin that sits on top of manufacturing and R&D costs and raises cloud prices. Google builds TPUs for itself at near manufacturing costs, adds no vendor margin, and then pushes aggressive cloud prices. This is vertical integration, chip to network to cloud. So pricing power comes from owning the whole stack. Training likes the fastest chips, but once a model is live, most money goes to inference, which values stable, low-cost hardware. If inference becomes 90% of spend, the winner is whoever offers the lowest cost per token at scale. Google's plan is to keep cutting costs with TPUs and pass savings through the cloud pricing. If that holds, buyers may care less about peak spending and more about price, reliability, and availability. Nvidia will stay strong on the frontier trading, but its ability to charge high margins could shrink if workloads move to cheaper inference on TPUs. The distribution flywheel is a huge leverage for Google too, because Google can fill TPU capacity across search, YouTube, Android, and Workspace. So you can see that Nvidia has their merchant model, right? And this is their cost and then their margin, right? This is Google, where they have TPU, manufacturing very similar with almost no margins here, right? And this is why they can get really aggressive on cloud pricing. Now, in response to that, this started to push out. Nvidia pushed back on talk of Google's TPU. So this was a couple days later. So Rowan Paul responded to his own post here on talk that Google's TPUs might surpass its AI platform, saying its tech still delivers better performance and flexibility compared to any ASICs. Now, that's true on the flexibility. The performance and the cost, it is not true. The context is that report says that Meta and Anthropic may spend billions on dollars of Google's TPUs, not GPUs, and some analysts think this could eventually pull around 10% of revenue away from Nvidia's AI business. So Nvidia is clearly defending its turf and the idea that GPU remains the default choice. I added the turf part, obviously, right? Nvidia is saying that Google's TPUs are custom ASIC chips that are very specific for specific AI workloads, and that's true, right? But especially when Google controls the whole stack from model design to data center layout. See, now this doesn't matter if you're going to go use Google Cloud and then use some of their AI to process it, right? You may not get as wide of a selection of models, but as long as they know which models are optimized for their hardware on their TPUs, you can get it at a fraction of the cost. Now, Nvidia says that this strength is also a weakness because ASICs are tuned to particular frameworks or functions. So once workloads, model types, or software stacks change, those chips cannot easily adapt to new cases. Now, this is true, but in a lot of cases, people don't care. So let's say you're using GPT-20, right? GPT-5, 20 billion parameter, and you want to go use that, or GPT-OSS 20 billion parameter, right? They may have this hardware optimized to that. So as long as that's what you're doing, then you don't care. You're just going to go for the cheapest one. But if you want to be able to test and try against 40 different models, you may not be able to use it, and that's where the Nvidia may come in. So by contrast, Nvidia's GPUs plus CUDA, their own custom kernel, right? Libraries and tooling form a general platform that can run almost any AI model in training or inference across many clouds or on many premises, which is why they mean by performance plus versatility plus fungibility. It also reminds everyone that Google is itself a major Nvidia customer, so TPUs are strong in-house options, but still sit inside of a market. Look, Google buys something everywhere. This is like saying the U.S. government is a customer of somebody. Like, sure, Google's using some Nvidia along the way. That's not a big surprise. Now, this guy says, breaking, Nvidia just named me, so calls out this guy, in a 7-page defensive memo to Wall Street. A $4 trillion company felt compelled to respond to a Substack analysis, and we're going to go through that, alongside with Michael Burry. So these two guys. Here's what happened and why. On November 23rd, 24th, Nvidia dispatched an unprecedented private memorandum to sell-side analysts explicitly rebutting two sources. The man who predicted the 2008 financial crisis, that's Burry, and my forensic analysis of the circular financing and AI infrastructure. 48 hours later, reports of Meta negotiating to purchase Google TPUs triggered a 2.5% drop. $116 billion erased at close. $150 billion at trading at intraday trough. Nvidia's defense deployed compelling data, free cash flow conversion, days sales, et cetera, right? Strategic investment totaling $4.7 billion year to date, representing less than 1% of revenue. So I acknowledge these points. The cash is real. The legal structure does not replicate Enron. But these memos answer the wrong question. The concern was never accounting fraud, right? That's what Enron did. It was structural dependency on capital flows that require AI demand projection to materials at rates that remain economically unvalidated. Burry clarifies this precisely. Quote, I'm not claiming Nvidia is Enron. It is clearly Cisco. Cisco did not commit fraud. Cisco sold real equipment to real customers building real networks. These customers simply built capacity for demand that never arrived. The stock price fell 89%. Now, Burry is now liquidating. Meta GPU negotiation is going to, could be that the CUDA mode is crossable. And the question is whether 44 times trailing earnings price this scenario where AI demand disappoints by even 20% while facing genuine competition for the first time. November 25th did not answer that question. It began asking it. So he goes through and he gives that here, but he actually gave a pretty good synopsis of it there. So I'm not going to drag you through it because it's got a lot of different parts to it here. But there's one other piece to this that I wanted to kind of hit on here before I go into some of my analysis of this. So Bubble Boy here says, I'm sorry to say this, but there isn't any kind of hardware that runs for 6 years straight. Now, this is one of the problems here, is their accounting problem is that they're estimating that their hardware will run for clients for 6 years. Run 6 years straight at full utilization and not have issues. The introduction of water cooling now has made them much less reliable. Don't believe me? Do the game theory. What benefit does a hardware manufacturer get by making it so that you need to upgrade to their new hardware every 3 years? Mercedes made this mistake of making the ultra reliable bulletproof cars in the 90s and absolutely ruined their profits in the early 2000s. Nvidia needs their customers to upgrade every 2 years or else they're cooked. Burry will vindicate on this, right? So this is ultimately the part that is also the tech analysis of this. So we have a lot of circular accounting. We have them being really defensive when a couple of guys threw some stones at them. So I guess they must be living in a glass house because they're pretty worried about those stones coming at them. And then on top of this, we have this interesting accounting that everybody is capexing this hardware for 6 years when we all know that the Blackwell chips are not going to last 6 years. So Nvidia recently dispatched an unprecedented private 7-page memo, and this massive company felt compelled to explicitly rebut a Substack analysis and Michael Burry, the man who predicted the 2008 financial crisis. So it's incredibly rare for a $4 trillion company to punch down at individual analysis unless those analysts hit a nerve that actually hurts. So Nvidia defended their cash flow and their investments, claiming their legal structure isn't like Enron, which is funny because Michael Burry didn't say Enron, he said Cisco. So they kind of again answered the wrong question. But the memo answered, this wrong question, right? People aren't worried about simple fraud. They're worried about the structural dependency on money that could disappear. So there's a massive misconception that this hardware is going to last for 6 years straight at full utilization without issues. And that's to my point here, right? I've got this hardware, can't point my thumb the right direction, that way. This hardware over here that's running on older hardware that's now old by standards, and you would never use this stuff in a data center. But for us, it works great on the software we're building. And I'm going to tell you more about the software we're building here very soon. So make sure you like and subscribe because we've got some fun, interesting announcements. But that's part of this massive misconception, right? Nvidia has introduced water cooling into their newer setups, and that's going to last much less long, length in time. The idea that you can run a GPU at 100% load for AI training for half a decade is totally laughable. If these chips burn out at 3 years, but the accounting books depreciate them over 6, the profit margins are totally fake. This is basic physics. Extreme heat plus constant voltage equals hardware death, and then now you add water cooling into it. It's going to add hardware death. If data centers have to replace these chips twice as often as predicted, the ROI model for the entire AI industry totally collapses. So the forensic analysis that spooked Nvidia focused on circular financing in this AI infrastructure. So here's the simple version. Nvidia invests in a cloud startup, and then that startup uses the money to buy Nvidia chips. Nvidia records this as revenue, pointing to strategic investments, while total $4.7 billion year to date. So while they claim this is less than 1% of the revenue, it creates an artificial demand signal that inflates the stock price. So it looks like genuine growth, but it's really just moving money from the left pocket to the right pocket and calling it a sale. This structural dependency on capital flows requires AI demand to stay insanely high, which hasn't been economically validated yet. So let's look at the game theory here. What benefits does a manufacturer get if they don't need to upgrade the hardware? So Michael Burry hit the nail on the head when he said, I'm not claiming NVIDIA's Enron. He's saying it's clearly Cisco. Now, right now, companies that are buying H100s are like toilet paper during a pandemic, buying capacity for AI demand that might appear, right? And so that's the problem here is they're buying for demand that could be there, but also may not ever show up, right? If you remember during the pandemic, there was these massive grabs for toilet paper. Now, Nvidia is actively pushing back on talks that Google's TPUs might surpass its AI platform. And reports say that Meta and Anthropic may spend billions of dollars on Google's TPUs, potentially pulling 10% of revenue away from Nvidia. So Google controls the whole stack from model design to data center layout, which allows them to make highly efficient custom chips. Nvidia argues that these ASICs, which stands for Application-Specific Integrated Circuits, are weakness because they can't adapt to new models. But if you're Meta and you're running the same Llama model on billions of queries, you don't need flexibility, you need cheap efficiency. So the big customers in the world are becoming their own suppliers, and that's ultimately a threat to NVIDIA's dominance. Now, NVIDIA defense is that their GPUs plus CUDA form a general platform that can run almost any AI model. They claim this offers them better performance and flexibility compared to any customer's ASICs. Now, NVIDIA likes to remind everyone that Google is still a major NVIDIA customer, but this creates an incredibly awkward dynamic where your biggest customer is actively trying to kill your business model. So Google's TPUs, it'd be easier if Google was using GPUs because that's a G, right? But Google's TPUs are a strong in-house option that sits inside a market where NVIDIA is still everywhere, but the walls are closing in. If Google can offload even 20% of their workload to their own chips, NVIDIA loses billions of dollars in high margin revenue. This isn't just about losing a sale, it's about losing the pricing power that allows NVIDIA to charge 90% margins. Now, once the big guys stop paying the NVIDIA tax, the entire profit structure of the company is going to come under fire. So the real question isn't whether NVIDIA committed fraud. The cash is real and they aren't Enron. The question is whether 44 times trailing earning is a sane price for a scenario where demand might disappear. So let's go back to the hardware for a second. The introduction of water cooling is not a feature, it's a desperate measure. It means we've hit the thermal limits of silicon and we're now adding plumbing to servers that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Water leaks in a data center are catastrophic, and I get that that's not that often, but it means that they're having to run these chips so high and so hot that they can't continue to innovate on these, right? This complexity adds failure points, and failure points reduces the effective lifespan of the hardware. If you're banking on these systems running flawlessly for 6 years to pay off the loan you took to buy them, that's a big gamble. And the reliability is boring, but lack of reliability is expensive, and these new GPUs are looking very expensive to maintain. So Michael Burry has been hitting bets against this bubble, and I don't know that I always agree with everything he says here, but I think in this case he definitely touched some kind of a nerve because NVIDIA flashed back quick, right? His bearish position against AI infrastructure is his final public statement as a fund manager, which carries a lot of weight. So when the AI gold rush cools down, we're going to be left with warehouses full of deprecated water-cooled heaters. The accounting trick of depreciating these assets over 6 years while they burn out in 3 is going to hit a balance sheet hard in a couple of years. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, and now it rhymes with Cisco 2000. Curious to hear what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I love to have a great conversation, so make sure you leave your comments down below and make sure you like and subscribe. Here at Startup Hack, we love to build custom software solutions for companies, so reach out if we can help. Check out startuphack.com, and here's some great information about our services.
Hi, I'm Spencer, a fractional CTO. With over a decade of executive leadership and 25 years in software development, I've transformed technology teams and products for businesses just like yours. As your fractional CTO, you get the strategic guidance of a seasoned technology executive without the full-time commitment, perfect for companies ready to leverage cutting-edge technology without expanding headcount. My team at Startup Hack has already built advanced AI agents for small and medium businesses, automating complex workflows and delivering advanced ROI to human workflows. We specialize in creating custom software that connects your systems into a single coherent technology ecosystem. Our development approach focuses on tangible business outcomes. For one client, we developed AI-powered workflows that cut days off of human processes. For another company, by connecting multiple systems, we reduced processing time to increase their ROI by over 75%. We don't just write code, we architect solutions that scale. Whether you need cloud system architecture, data integration between legacy systems, or custom AI agents that automate your unique business processes, my team delivers results that exceed your expectations. Having led technology for a lot of companies and launched 7 successful brands of my own, I bring battle-tested expertise to your business challenges. Our specialty is turning technological complexity into business advantage. So if you're ready to harness the power of AI and custom software to drive your business forward, let's connect. Together, we'll build technology that doesn't just solve today's problems, it positions you for tomorrow's opportunities. Technology leadership, decades of experience, AI powered. Reach out today and we can help you. Check out startuphack.com/Spencer.